Common Sense Weekend is here.
Drive home with Rob Rinder.
Live, loud, listen. Rinder Talk.
Don't get nicked listening to anything else.
Rob Rinder on Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. It's now time to go over to the United States of America with our Professor John Christopher Bua, White House correspondent at Real Political News. And ever, it is an informed delight. How are you today, Prof?
We're waiting a cyclone snow bomb that's on its way. It'll cause wreak havoc on the entire East Coast, including our nation's capital.
Who knew? Does it have a name?
It's called Snow Bomb number 1. Now, of all things, and just as in weather, as in politics, as in global politics, as in comedy, timing is everything. And Joe Biden is heading off to Pittsburgh to do an infrastructure event where a bridge has just collapsed this morning.
Well, I mean, that's not a good look, right?
No.
Now, bad luck to him. It's interesting. I didn't know about this big weather movement that's coming your way, but that's normally that would be on the BBC Wires. We know about America. I just had a very informed expert that used to be an advisor to the Foreign Secretary of the Ukraine talk about how deadly this buildup of force is on the Ukrainian border. And in the news here, it's being presented as a serious existential threat to the West, and certainly a kind of central aspect of our news. And certainly most people have some view on it or are aware of it at least. Can I ask you, Prof. JC, how much of an issue is Ukraine with the American public?
Well, it is an issue because, as we spoke last week, the president made a bit of a gaffe when he said that he talked about an incursion, and then he meant invasion. And then he said, let me make it clear, if the Russians go into Ukraine, that is a serious problem. And then he kind of backed off a little bit. And then he had a chat with Zelensky, who said that he said Zelensky was kind of playing it down. He was tamping it down. And Zelensky said, no one's going to tell me what's going on. We want to be in the negotiations. There's no tanks rolling into Kyiv right now. So everybody's kind of like needs to chill out. And it really comes down to who your audience is and what your agenda is. And then you listen to that and it'll change in 10 minutes, just like the weather in England.
Yeah, I guess one of the issues that my very informed expert was talking about was about American strength. And it's not just about communication, but it's about, meaning what you say and saying what you mean. And after what happened in Afghanistan, the rights or wrongs of it, for many people, it demonstrated, especially Putin perhaps, a weakening of the West's will to protect its long-term interests. Do you think after Afghanistan, this is really about standing up to Putin and critically, not just about American prestige, but about America wanting to engage in the rest of the world and understanding its importance as the only remaining world superpower?
Well, there are people here who would like to see Ukraine free, would like to see Putin taken care of, but don't want to see body bags, and they don't want to see coffins returning to Dover Airport with our military. Remember, during Vietnam, it was Dan Rather who was reporting live, basically, and we were watching the war in real time. And that's when Walter Cronkite said, I think we've lost America. We've lost it because Vietnam really hurt. Biden needs to look strong for his domestic audience, therefore, the strong comments, but he also needs to realize that there are many people in this country who do not believe that the United States should be the policeman of the world. Now, your fellow Boris Johnson is having his own issues. He's come out very strongly about what would happen if Russia got involved. The Germans, however, are another issue. They're terrified that Putin will cut off Nord Stream.
Well, sorry to cut over you, Prof. JC. You're right about what you were about to say about Germany. There are real issues there, and there hasn't been a strong backbone or a coherent response from the European community countries. Safe to say that the NATO allies have made it very, very clear that if there is an incursion into Ukraine, a current Ukrainian territory, as you rightly describe, people would argue both in international law and in fact that there was already an invasion by Russia. which has gone unanswered. If that continues, there will be an aggressive military response. And the policy of the British so far has been to send arms and send the resources the Ukrainians need to defend themselves. The question is there political will in Washington, and especially amongst those advising President Biden, to do the same?
Well, there is. And in fact, on Monday, we have German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is coming to the White House. Mm-hmm. Wonder what that's going to be about, because they're terrified that we will cut off Nord Stream. And when the State Department spokesperson Ned Price was asked about Nord Stream, he said, well, if the Russians invade Ukraine, he appropriately said, Nord Stream is kaput.
Mm-hmm. What's your view? It's an interesting thing. We don't necessarily get a sense outside of the perhaps two coasts of America, or, the Washington political elite, or those who are as politically engaged, certainly as you are, and the people that you spend a good deal of your time with. When I ask you that first question about the views most American public take on the Ukraine, do you think that, broadly speaking, outside of those who are the most politically engaged, people really care? I mean, for instance, do they know, you refer to it, about Boris Johnson's current political problems? Or, are they chiefly concerned in America by the various domestic issues you're facing, COVID, inflation,
well, they're
and so
most concerned, good question, and it's a great question. And the Yanks here are mostly concerned about their pocketbook. Mm-hmm. They're concerned about the Omicron. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about we are in an election year. This is where all of the representatives in Congress, including 1/3 of the Senate, are up for re-election, and that's really concerning. As far as Boris Johnson and presidents go, the Americans look at him and figure, well, now you've got your Trump. They think he's kind of a joke, whatever. They don't know all the details about the cake event. But we do have a history with the Brits, a wonderful history, going back to FDR and Churchill and Kennedy and Macmillan and Maggie Thatcher and Reagan. I can go on, Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, Barack and David Cameron. And now they're wondering, who is this guy, Boris, that we see on occasion? He seems to be kind of humorous. I mean, they don't really take him terribly seriously. And Americans don't spend a heck of a lot of time looking at international news, I'm sorry to say.
Right. No, and, that, of course, makes global stability slightly more dangerous. I mean, when you're talking about the serious fault line at the heart of Europe, where you've got a global behemoth doing, as the expert who was on earlier, who, as I say, advised the foreign minister of the Ukraine, that it's not just about invasions or incursions into the Ukraine that Russia have been involved in, but interfering globally in democratic processes across the world, including, he said and explained eloquently and with real evidence, the last presidential election in your country and the one before that, probably.
Well, I think you live a lot closer to the behemoth there, which is the individual who would like to be, to Imperial Russia again, and we don't. And we're not crazy about what the Russians have done, and no one has really sold this to the public. Biden has not really said, "Hey, look, we really need to get serious about Putin." He's made a couple of basically errors in speech, and he had to come back and quickly redo them. But I think we're not paying that much attention. And I think we just don't want to see another war again, because we don't feel we're policemen of the world. And the real right-wing media, and you know who they are,
sure.
They are basically siding with Putin over Biden, because they would like to see anybody, and they'd love to have Trump again. And Trump's the relationship with Putin.
Well, I don't know about Trump's relationship with Putin, proven or not, but what is proven is, for example...
Well, if you've got an hour or two, I'll tell you.
Well, perhaps on a podcast, but one of the things that is clear is that there were banks of, groups of Russian bots and programmers who were trying to interfere with the election and the democratic process, and not just in the United States, but in other elections as well, according to the expert who was on on before. Now, the impact that had, well, he was somebody that was deeply informed at the highest level. Yeah, my concern is in the absence of real engagement or the language of strength that we risk, as was described earlier on, in a way I have to say was pretty frightening, global catastrophe. There's a speech I referred our expert to, which was Thatcher giving a speech to the joint session of Congress in 1985. I urge you to go and watch it. And she says, look, it was our strength that brought the Soviets to the negotiating table. Not our weakness, and you can watch it as she gets a standing ovation from most of the Democratic Party then. And
I saw that speech live.
You were there live? Wow, what a thing!
I saw it on TV live, and I watched this.
Right, what a thing to have seen. And whilst we have a United States that's not prepared in a muscly fashion to stand up for NATO and its allies, it puts the world at risk, right?
Well, I think we are standing up to NATO and its allies. And I think that the thing is, it was also the unity of the West that needs to be brought together. Mm-hmm. And I think the Biden can do that. I think the US and the UK can do that. And I'll never forget Ronald Reagan, who said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Mm-hmm. And bloody heck, he did, because they were afraid of Ronnie. They were terrified of he might do something really unbelievable. And they spent all their money on defending themselves against Reagan, and they went down the tubes doing it.
Right. They believed that he would do what he said. In other words, that there was the big superpower that meant, well, that was going to use the full force of all of its economic might. Last thing, and this is an insider thing, which people should know a little bit about, but it's something obviously that I'm very anarchish on, which is about your Supreme Court. And Stephen Breyer, the oldest of the left wing, you might describe the left-leaning parts of, well, the three of them that are left of the court, has, after I should say some pressure, agreed to resign. I don't know if there's been an announcement today. I know that there was perhaps going to be a press conference. And President Biden made clear, and I think that was supported again or reinforced confirmed by Jen Psaki, his press secretary, that he would replace Stephen Breyer with an African-American woman, the first African-American woman. And there are a number of candidates. One, a judge who I think went to Harvard and was, I think, the editor of the Harvard Law Review, Kentaji, I think her name is. A good candidate to be sure, but a lot of our listeners will ask the question, well, why does it matter that she's a person of color and a woman? Surely the issue is whether or not she's a good judge.
Well, I have a thought on that. It's political, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of my own theory. There has never been a black member of the Supreme Court, a black woman member of the Supreme Court.
We have Clarence Thomas.
And I think personally, it's about time, but here's the thing. When you're talking about, I'm going to have the first black woman on the Supreme Court, it kind of gives it away. How cool would it be? And I say cool because I'm thinking of, of a political cool event. How cool would it be if Joe Biden said nothing? And on the day that he nominated her, he brought her out into the Rose Garden, and it was a black woman. Wouldn't that be a great shocker? And it would make Joe Biden look like he had all the power in the world, but he refused to use it. And here she is, and she's going to get through.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the two candidates that are being, I'm afraid I don't have access to their names. I mean, one of them I know is on the Supreme Court in California, is being put forward. And I think the one that's the front runner clerked for Breyer.
Yes.
And is, by all accounts, also she was on the Sentencing Commission. I mean, she is, on any view, the type of candidate who's Sorry?
They're all extremely qualified.
Yeah.
Very highly rated. And
highly rated and qualified, but I guess some of our listeners the question should be whether or not you're going to be a good judge, not whether or not you come from a certain community. People here don't necessarily understand that. Why does that matter? Why is that so important in American politics for the Supreme Court? If the Supreme Court is, as it continues to claim, and as politicians, I suppose, virtue signal about, that it's supposed to be an apolitical body. What difference does it make?
Well, it isn't now. And there's a few appointees that Trump put in there who are extremely political and terribly unqualified. But I have to say, on the opposite end, every individual that Biden and that you have mentioned is in terms of their judgment, in terms of the kind of jurist they would be, and you are a jurist, they would really understand the balance of the court and why the court is there to begin with, as part of our three-part system of government: the executive, judiciary, and the legislative. And I think all of them are qualified. But my feeling is I wouldn't have said a word. I just would bring out an incredible person, and that would be that. And I think it would be pretty darn cool. And the Supreme Court is the court of the last resort, who need protection. And usually the protection would need to come for people of color. And that's the history of this country. You don't quite know it. You're not an American, although you certainly are very aware of what's gone on in this history. And you know it as an attorney, as a lawyer. We've had a lot of really difficult problems in the courts when it came to voting rights.
Sure.
We have it again, and the civil rights law, et cetera, et cetera.
Very important
Thank
case
God
by
for
Ruth Bader
LBJ.
Ginsburg when the act that you're referring to, which protected, some would argue, the fairness and the ability of people of color to be able to vote. And as you'll be aware, on a very, very tight vote, 5-4, that act was done away with. And the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg would be, I think her description from the judgment from her memory, it's like throwing away your umbrella because it's not raining, was the language she used in that judgment.
She was a wise woman. I wish she would have, well, never mind.
I hear you.
The timing is everything.
Well, timing is everything, and it looks like this coincides potentially with the immediate, well, not the immediate, the very serious risk of the Democratic Party losing control of Congress in the upcoming midterm elections, and that's probably why whomever is nominated needs to be somebody that can actually get through the Senate pitbulls. Do you think it's possible?
Yes, I do think that is very possible. I also think that there people are very exorcised now, especially people who are the progressives, realizing what the GOP is trying to do in many states in terms of the voting rights, John Lewis Voting Rights Act, et cetera, that they may, what we call GOTV, they may get out the vote because they're inspired, they're inflamed, they're ready to go, and I think they may show up at the polls. And thanks to the Voting Rights Act, and thanks to Lyndon Johnson, you don't have to figure out how many jelly beans are in a jar to be able to pull the lever.
Well, we could talk about this a long time. Informed as ever, it's our Prof. JC. A delight to listen to you. I hope that you go back and listen to our Ukrainian expert. It's pretty terrifying, to say the very least. This is Rob Rinder. You're listening to Talk Radio, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock.
Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.